We are minutes away from a White House briefing on all of this. The president, of course, will be meeting with all of those members of the House Ways and Means Committee, the Republicans who put this thing together, the Freedom Caucus chair, Congressman Mark Meadows, who joins us right now. Chairman, very good to have you.
It's great to be back with you, Neil, on an exciting day here on Capitol Hill for the American people and our economy. So,
all right. So you like what you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a work in progress. Obviously, just met with the speaker. He was on his way to the White House, as you mentioned, to meet with the president and other Ways and Means members. So there's work to be done still. And specifically,
where do you think the work has to be done?
Yeah, I think probably most of the work is looking at making sure those pass-through rates are really something that benefits all pass-throughs, and the other side of that is looking on the territorial agreement to make sure that we don't create a de facto minimum tax. It's something that we've been advocating for to make sure that we can be competitive internationally, and so we're working on those, still digesting all the legislative text to make sure that we understand it properly, but we're getting close.
All right, I don't want to get into the weeds here. You're far smarter than I, and I would look like an idiot, so I don't want to go there. But I do know in the pass-through thing, what I heard, Chairman, is that a lot of your colleagues wanted to avoid some of the well-to-do who are stuck at a higher rate using that as a vehicle to pay a lower rate. In other words, you're at 39.6% or even 35% to end up paying 25%. So all sorts of barriers, blocks were put up to prevent that sort of thing. And then I thought of what's happening with keeping the top rate at 39.6% for the million and over crowd. And I thought, boy, Republicans are spending a lot of time trying to make sure that this isn't tilted to the rich. But do you think for all of that trouble, you got one Democratic vote?
I don't think we're going to get many Democrat votes. I don't even know that we'll get one Democrat vote. And so that's why we've got to really concentrate on making sure that it's good for the American people and really good for every taxpayer. I mean, you know, I have not found anybody in Washington, D.C. who is more efficient at spending the American taxpayer dollars than they themselves. And so it's critically important we put more of that back into their pocket. And so I don't know that the adjustments that have been made will actually bring any Democrats across, certainly not in the House, and I'm doubtful in the Senate.
Do you think then that your party wasted its time trying to do so?
Well, I think what we have to do is we have to focus on that one individual that might try to game the system and make sure that we've got guardrails there to protect that. Outside of that, though, is we don't need to expand it so much that it hurts small businesses and where a lot of the economic growth will come from. And so that's why I say there's still work to be done. I can tell you there's a real open ear with Chairman Brady and the Speaker on this particular issue. And at this, I'm still very optimistic that we'll pass this in a couple of weeks. Obviously, the Senate will roll out their bill in about a week. We'll have to come together and get that put together in terms of a compromise. But I still fully expect it to be on the president's desk before Christmas.
We were hearing from a number, including Kathy McMorris-Rodgers and others, saying that this would already, assuming the approval goes as you kind of stipulated there, Chairman, in the House and then in the Senate, signed by the president for the years out, that right away in next year's paychecks, Americans would be seeing it. I assume by her saying that, it's not a this year event. It's not a retroactive event.
Well, right now, the way the plan is, it's not retroactive. Obviously, the deductions and so forth will start to show up in next year's paychecks. But I think the other part of that, Neil, is this. That's not a totally done deal at this point. I think there are a number of us who still believe that it should be retroactive. We haven't given up on that. It becomes, you know, what are the trade-offs? Where do we find the pay-fors for some of that? And so that's not a closed issue, but certainly the way it is right now, it's set to go into effect on January of next year.
It doesn't look very likely. We're also hearing from Senator Marco Rubio the child tax credit, which was hiked to $1,600 a child. He wanted more. I think he wanted $2,000. I mean, is this going to be a contentious issue? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that that's going to be a stumbling block for where we get it over. It is $1,600 in our bill. If the Senate comes out with a $2,000 mark for the child tax credit, I think in the end there is an area that could compromise on that. Again, we're trying to put more money in working families' pockets, and that particular issue is one that we're focusing on very closely. And so I wouldn't say that that is such an obstacle that it would take down the whole tax reform bill at this point. It's just a matter of getting us together and hopefully having good discussions to hopefully reach a compromise.
You know, Congressman, this is just my read, but I think there's a strategy involved here that this is not happenstance or even haphazard on Republicans' part to eventually not use the tax code to favor industries, even by scaling back the mortgage, deduction, by limiting it to new purchases, $500,000, mortgages from $1 million now, and that has already come down from what used to be limitless not too long ago. And other provisos on the write-off for state and local taxes, that there's a concerted effort here to plant the seeds for another stab at this, where this is just the start. And there are many who will like that, others who will get very annoyed by that. But is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I think you're right. But, Neil, isn't it high time that just the well-connected are not the ones that get the best benefits in the special carve-outs? It's high time that we allow the free markets and the markets to drive the economy. It's what made us great.
But you know what the home builders are saying, right? You know what realtors are saying. You know what some bankers are saying. And sure enough, I'm sure you predicted this, expected it, but they're letting their views known. They're not happy.
Well, I met with some of them just yesterday, and listen, as a guy who built homes and was in the real estate business, there's no one who understands what drives wealth and economy probably better than I do here on Capitol Hill.
Do you think that anything you guys cooked up is going to hurt that industry? I can't see a doubling in the deduction that families can enjoy would necessarily help or hurt housing.
No, I don't see it hurting or helping that. There are some things that are still being discussed that hopefully will make sure that we continue good job growth in the housing and real estate market. But at this point, I don't see anything that is so troubling that can't be fixed that makes sure that in the final bill that passes that we get an economy that's going. The preliminary numbers that we're hearing in terms of GDP growth over the next 10 years are extremely promising. I'm not at liberty to share those, but I can tell you that I was very encouraged by the preliminary numbers, and hopefully we'll get the final numbers in the coming hours where all of a sudden the markets will react to that to see that
preliminary numbers from whom? CBO? Or?
Actually, when we look at the scores where they're actually scoring this, you've got Tax Foundation, you've got Joint Tax and others where they're looking at GDP growth over a 10-year period, and it's all about jobs, and I'm very encouraged with the numbers we're hearing, and so it's a great start. We will finish strong, and we'll make sure that we have this all happening.